All right, to interact with your subject, you just walk up to him, say, "Hey, I want to take your picture." Then you take the picture, then you say thanks, then you smile, then you walk. Don't forget to smile.
No, you forgot.
What?
You look real pretty today.
There you go.
At the beginning.
And if it's a pretty lady, she got a pretty mouth. You go, "Hey, you got a pretty mouth," and then that's gonna make them feel real nice. They're gonna feel real comfortable. Then be like, "Oh, take my fit," because that's how ladies are. And then you take I don't know what kind of. I was transitioning into different dialects there.
That's all right.
I was like Southern, and then I went like New Orleans black man. Hey guys, this is the third installation of James and Will talk about things that they pretend to know things about. And sorry, I have something in my tooth. Okay. So today we're going to talk about something really exciting. We have our camera here and my coffee here. This is his new camera. We talked about that in the last video. We'll link up to it there. Reverse. I think it's over here now. I think it's up top on the little, card. Right.
Right there.
Right. I'm going to have to animate that. Okay, so we're going to talk about, what were we going to talk about? Oh, yeah, communication with subjects. Here we are street photographers that go up to people and approach them and say hello and ask if we can take their photo. A lot of street photographers will come at it another way, go at a more candid approach, if you will. Not talk to them, take their photos, say hey, like Eric Kim, "Hey, I like your bag," walk off, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We are street portrait photographers. And so there's the communication in both types of, any type of street photography that involves people is very important. But it is very important in a very special way for street portrait photography, because you need to make the person feel comfortable with you and feel like they can trust you. And maybe they don't like having their picture taken. How are you going to break that wall down? Will, what is the first thing that you think a person would feel as far as the negative side of things if you approach them in not the best way? What would be the first word that comes to mind?
Help!
Help.
Yes, like when you see me, the shaved head and stuff, running after you in a scary alley, yelling, "Hey, lady!
Right.
Lady!"
Right.
And carrying some large object in my hand of indiscernible type. Well,
exactly.
Now it's a little bit smaller, but before, it's like I look like I'm going to come bludgeon you and steal your money or purse or valuables, or just ask for directions.
Mm-hmm. All of them very dangerous.
Yeah.
So yes, I would say that the word I was looking for, but you got it, is threatened. They're going to feel threatened. This is even not necessarily if you're running after them with a bat, as he was implying, but if you're just coming up to them and maybe the way that you approach them is a little bit too sporadic and you like jump out of a bush or something. There are many different ways that this can happen in a much milder way that can still be very scary. So not scary so much, but they won't.
Uncomfortable,
right. So you want to communicate in a way that makes them feel like they can let their walls down with you. You never met this person. You just walked up. If you're like me, you're a dude with big hair, and you're like him, you're tall, and scary.
Yeah,
really scary.
Really scary, evidently.
I'm just kidding. Those are his words. I don't think he's scary. You're a very nice guy. But you talk about how you look focused a lot, and so you get
intense.
You get intense.
On the street.
Yeah.
So that can be a little bit intimidating.
So I think the first thing that I try to communicate when I walk up to somebody is to the sense of that you can trust me, that I am approaching you with a sense of calmness and almost like smallness, like meekness, like hello, I want to be your friend. I'm not like the least threatening possible way you can approach somebody. That's the way to approach somebody. This comes very natural, so I don't want us to get all hung up on this idea of doing it perfectly or whatever. I mean, this is something that's very natural to us as humans. But I think it's something that you just have to be intentional about focusing in on as a street photographer if you want the best result, obviously. So You know, I come up when I walk up to people, I'm like very calm, like, "Hi, I'm a street photographer. Can I take your photo?" My hands are open. This communicates. I've talked about this in another video, but this communicates a sense of openness and friendliness and trustingness. And like if you're pointing at them, like, "I want to take your photo," like that's weird. People are gonna not know what to do with that sometimes. Not everybody. Some people could deal with that, I think.
Some people.
I'd be all right with that. But some people, you know, you got...
It's like, a little intense for some
you got the girl sitting on the bench playing on her phone.
Right.
You walk up to her and you're like, "I'll take a photo of you." She'd be like, "Ah, help." That word that you said. So, you know, just being very, very calm and very, very gentle in your approach. And over-the-top communication, I think, is what will ring true throughout this entire video. It was about communicating as much as you can to the person, helping them, guide them along this little journey they're having with you as much as humanly possible. So, Will, talk about how you communicate calmness or whatever you communicate. Scariness?
No.
Attack.
I try to communicate goofiness. So to combat the fact that sometimes I can be a little intense, you know, I start off by, usually I kind of lean in and I make myself look a little bit shorter. I usually call girls Miss, all girls, older women, younger women, everybody I call Miss. Guys, like, I don't know if I have a term. Excuse me, Miss.
Or is it like,
yeah, it's more
"Hey
like,
there, Miss"?
It's more like, "Excuse me, Miss." Just trying to seem, like you said, calm, non-threatening. And the first thing I usually offer up, which everybody should have if you're doing street portraiture, is business cards.
Boom! I don't have
super important.
Keep going.
This is super important. Even though for just a few dollars you could have business cards made. No, James.
It's not that way. Okay, it's in here.
You can do it, James. You can do it. I trust you.
I got it.
All right, you want to be? I know you want to be a part of this. I'm gonna wait.
I'm out. I can't go on a photo walk.
All right, so just imagine James's card is right here next to me. So what this communicates is that you're probably a professional photographer, or you're at least focused enough on your hobby to make the cash outlay to have business cards.
Got it.
All right, so
I got it.
Here's a lot of.
I got
James.
a couple.
James likes to be very minimal in his design. He's
Yeah.
got this little triple circle
Nice.
thing, which is pretty nice, kind of like color theory stuff.
You can't be too intimidating with your card either. If your card's like flames
and dragons
and
wizards,
like on the bottom, it's like I also teach
kill jitsu.
I also teach kill jitsu.
Yeah,
and
at the dungeon,
and then
down in Spartanburg.
Down in
yeah, it's pretty intimidating.
Exactly.
So cards are really important. Cards will diffuse any situation, especially if you want to take someone's photograph and they're with their parents, even if they're like 20 years old. Parents can be very intimidating about like, is this a real thing? Da, 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 da. And if you just give them their card, it usually stops all of that. And then the last resort is like if you just show somebody your blog on your phone, like, wow, well, unless this person just spent time having 3,000 blog posts, I think it's a real thing. So I think having cards are important. I think your energy in the communication, communication's of course a two-way street. So it's like if your energy isn't good, for lack of a better word, kind of positive, maybe not like overbearing, but you seem interested in them, that really helps influence the situation, even if they're kind of not in a great mood. It can kind of just help perk people up. So that's a big thing for me. That, and I think for me, I shoot street style, so it's much more kind of clothing oriented personality. So I tend to try to pick something out that's very unique in what they wear. And something that maybe no one else would notice, but they had thought about that morning. And that helps build this trust, which, the openness and the trust is what's necessary for a good street portrait. Because if the person feels really uncomfortable in the picture, more than likely they'll look uncomfortable in the picture, and the image won't really have a very enjoyable feeling in general. Generally, it's kind of, you can just feel the tension in the image and not in a good way at all. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of the starting block for me.
I think it's a fascinating point that you've always made about, what did you just say? I know it was fascinating enough that I forgot it. You were just saying it. You just said it.
Comfortable
It
people.
was so good. It was
People comfortable.
comfortable people. I don't know.
Feel
It's
it in
just
the
all-
Everything.
Everything you say is good.
Just
Will.
everything. Just
Jeez,
listen.
man.
I'm sorry. Next video.
Ugh.
I'll say way more wrong
Gosh,
stuff.
there was one thing anyway. Okay, so I think a huge part of being on the street, and I think we've been covering this entire time, but a huge part of working with people, and just the thing that's the scary part because you can't plan it, is being extremely intuitive. I think the best street photographers are the street photographers that have this present intuitiveness about them. Like how does that play out for you as far as just being intuitive in the moment, feeling what the
Okay.
person's
Yeah,
off?
I mean, I think, obviously it's like when you're downtown and you see somebody on their phone, an obvious example, like, having some horrible argument with someone, and you're like, I kind of want to take that person's picture, and it's like the vibes coming off are like, oh, okay, that's not a good idea. But I think this is kind of a very dangerous area. I think it's kind of very much a two-edged sword, to get back to our wizards and dragon references earlier.
It's going to be a recurring theme.
I hope not. I think that this kind of two-edged sword is like, you don't want to psych yourself out by like creating these mental abstract ghost ideas that like this person has a tough mustache and muscles and he looks like he's really mean. I think it's important to be intuitive to certain things, but also still willing to kind of reach out and communicate with someone, because in the end, some of my best photos and the people that I've been most excited about I've been photographing were people that I thought were going to shoot me down in a second or just be very flippant about it. So I think that's kind of a tough balance in that regard, is like, is it a mental abstraction you're creating of the person, or is it like something genuine, like they're on their phone with their divorce lawyer screaming, how much money are they gonna get?
Or maybe they're just joking and their kids
Right,
yelling
and
at
then-
them and they're
yeah.
like joking around like, I
Yeah.
hate you,
Yeah, so I mean that's a
My
tough
parents always say that to me.
that's a tough area, I think.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I face on the street as far as intuitiveness, I guess the biggest thing that always seems to come up, because there are a lot of things that I think are big constants, but I'm not talking about constants, I guess. It's these certain situations where you feel people kind of like wanting to go on their way. Like you're talking to them and you're taking their photo, but you can tell that they're not interested in having a
Oh
conversation.
yes, once you actually engage
Then
them.
once you actually
Yes,
engage
that's
them.
really important. I think it's important to kind of throw out there at the very beginning, like if they seem hesitant, I always generally say, if you're really not comfortable with this, you don't have to. There's no obligation. And I think, not sound like it guilt trips people, but sometimes it makes people kind of reconsider, like, okay, this person's very genuine. And then sometimes they do relax, and it was just that they were very tense and they felt like they had no way out. They felt like a trapped animal. It's for lack of a better word, but
That's
I think
what we create in people.
once you give people that option, I think they see that you really are passionate about what you do, but you're very caring about the subject themselves. And I think with street portraiture, that's even kind of more important, I think, step, because you're interacting with the person, where street photography, regular street photography, you just snap and kind of say something and go away, and it's like, it's kind of over. But with street portraiture, you're taking a little bit of time, they have to be comfortable in front of the street. And I think that kind of segues well into like, maybe you could give me your thoughts on kind of how you interact with your subject once they say yes, and once you're kind of going about shooting them before you get to, your next stage that we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah. Wait. So that was to me? That was
Yes.
a question?
Yes.
Say it again.
Okay. So what kind of do you go through in your continued interaction with them once they've said yes and you're starting to take some photos? Like what's kind of the next step in your communication once they feel like, yeah, this is an awesome idea, I love it, let's start the picture process. Like how does your communication work through that process?
Okay. So goofiness definitely immediately comes into play. That's an excellent point that you made a second ago. Goofiness comes in really well. That's very important, and it makes people feel relaxed and calm. I always try to make them feel like the process can be as quick as they need it to be. So I'm like, I'm like, would you mind if I take a photo of you really quick? And I make it as unintimidating as possible. One of the things I say almost every time, depending on the situation. Sometimes you have the situation where the person is, this is actually how you shoot all the time, but you have two different types of situations. You have the one where the person is walking down the street and you see them and you just like the way they look, so you want to take their photo. Then you have the person who is sitting down doing something. I approach a lot of people that are sitting down doing something. And so if they're doing something, if I have the ability, I'll tell them, do your thing, pretend like I'm not here, because I want to capture that natural moment. So I think that makes it a lot less threatening too, is to just kind of allow them to just go back to what they were doing and just be like, I'm just going to hover around. So, I mean, I try to, I do it in that way. I also, all of it's based around just making them feel calm, making them feel very I want to be intuitive and make sure I feel like their needs are being met in the moment.
Right, because I mean that's necessary to get the photograph to look comfortable and relaxed and real. You know, if you don't cater to their needs to a bit, they just get fidgety and uncomfortable. So I think that's kind of an unsung line. People think, I just got to get them to agree, and then once I take their picture, you can have the composition beautiful, the light beautiful, but if they're like, doing this one, it just doesn't communicate well. I mean, for me, it's definitely, even though I shoot, it's generally more skewed towards fashion or physical appearance, some sort of visual cue on how people express themselves. Most of these people are not models. And this is really important if you're a photographer, a professional photographer, or someone who does a lot of other work with models and things like that, is if you start shooting especially street portraitures, you'll learn really quick. You have to give these people a lot of direction a lot of times. Even if you get somebody and they look just, gorgeous and they're 6 feet tall and they look like they're just going to vogue it for you, just over the shoulder look. Most people aren't going to. So, I mean,
I think it's leadership. I think a huge part of it is leadership.
Without, I think, taking away their identity. I think some people just kind of have something, this essence that they'll give you visually. But it's if they can't give you that, you have to mold them more. I think that's a fickle line for a street photographer, especially street portrait photographers, capturing the person, but then you still having some input in creating your artistic vision.
Okay, sorry guys, for the second time it cut off again, probably a little less abruptly than last time. Maybe, I don't know, I haven't edited that one yet. Anyway, so we're still trying to reel this in and get it kind of dialed in, but you know what, this just means more content for you guys. It's going to be longer, but our cutoff is actually 20 minutes on this camera, but we're
doing our best.
We're doing our best. We'll get this together soon. But Will, you're talking about how people aren't models and go into that, because he went on this monologue and it was amazing. And
it went way too long.
But it went
so people are not models. If you're a photographer, and especially if you're a professional photographer and you're used to working, with models, or even just people that know they're going to be photographed later in the day, I feel like people mentally prepare for these things. You're in for kind of a rude awakening if you move into street photography, especially, mainly just street portraiture, because with other street photography, they won't know you're taking a picture. But the kind of whole thing is these people aren't necessarily going to feel comfortable. They might look like, they're 6 foot tall, wearing this crazy outfit, and you think they look like they should be on the cover of Vogue. So you expect the next thing to do is them to go. As soon as you tell them to look, they're like, they Vogue it.
Right.
But it doesn't happen. A lot of times they just get real tense and they do the anti-Vogue. They're and they look right past the camera over your head, and it's oh no, not that.
Am I like the younger brother child who is I don't know. Just keep going.
So
I was shorter than him for a second. I tried to make a joke out of it, but I failed. So I'm gonna let him talk.
We're just gonna keep on moving. So the first thing is kind of you were saying make them comfortable. Attend to their needs. So I think a big thing is to constantly kind of tell them they're doing a good job. Voice it, because you might be in your camera fiddling around oh, I can't see the focus. You're like zooming in, you're making these terrible faces. The sun's like blasting off your screen, and you're like, ah. And they're like over there going, am I doing okay? And, they think that you're like, they think the picture you took of them is the ugliest picture you've ever taken in your entire life. But actually, you're just checking your camera. So it's important to kind of tell them specifically, like, I messed up, or I need to take a few more pictures because I don't have my settings right. It's not because of you. You're doing an awesome job. Or maybe they are doing something a little bit weird. Just be like, hey, we're going to try a new pose now. That was great, but let's try something new. But just kind of not make it sound like they're doing a terrible job and you're just like, oh, these are all unusable. I'm just going to give up on this person. Because that's usually not the part. It's usually not what's going on. And I think the thing is kind of complimenting them, giving them some sort of very specific compliment. For me, it relates to like how they put themselves together, how they dress, how they did their hair, something that maybe not many people notice that day. And I think that kind of gives you an in with them and kind of makes them more comfortable with you. I think that's kind of the whole thing is...
That's absolutely fascinating. I love that. 'Cause
Making,
I do that too, kind of naturally.
Yeah, I think it's just like you want to relate with them. Even if I'm not shooting like street style, say I'm just out and I find somebody I want to take a portrait of. I ran into a lady and it was like, she was kind of hesitant. I was like, I'll send you the picture. That's another great thing. Communicate is like, for me, I'm always like, if you let me take your picture, I'm more than happy to let you have that picture. That's one thing that I'll always do. And that makes a lot of people, oh, really? Because, we're used to every picture of ourselves is from an iPhone, and we in the bathroom of a club, and we like edit out one of our friends, and then we edit out our other friend, and there's just like this really skinny picture of like half our face with someone's shoulder here and someone's elbow here. And the lights like thermonuclear, so...
He's referring to my photography, by the way.
Yeah, that's what every picture James takes looks like. That's very postmodern, though. That's impressive.
It's an artistic choice.
It definitely
sure.
is. So, I think that's...
I take that as a compliment. I assume that was how you meant that.
Yeah. Anyways. So, I think that's kind of what I do, but I'm on the lucky end here because, for me... Once I get the photograph, I'm done. So I generally am like, hey, good to see you. Check my website. Your picture will be up in a few weeks. That is important. Let them know that the picture is not going to be up in like 5 minutes if it's not. Sure, because they'll like, I don't know how many emails I've gotten from people being like, so I guess you didn't use my picture. Could you send it to me? I'm sorry it didn't turn out good. And I'm like, no, your picture was amazing. I just haven't posted it yet. It will be up in a few days. So I think communicating that with them several times, because a lot of people kind of get lost in the whirl of some random person wants to take my picture and this is kind of a weird life encounter. But after that tangent, really, I'm all done once I take their picture and walk away. Whereas James' story is just beginning.
I know. Yeah, because I have to then do my best to try to pull something out of them. The good thing for me that differs from somebody like a Humans of New York is I don't rely on the stories so much. Only some of my photos get stories, but I try to have a conversation and pull out whatever I can. So it does turn into me slowly trying to go down the rabbit hole of who they are and learn about them, and hopefully I can pull out some sort of really nice nugget of wisdom or a thought or a little story about who they are. But that's something that's still growing in me for sure. That's been one of the biggest struggles for me, is trying to figure out how the heck to pull out something really interesting and something that falls within the bounds of what I want it to be.
Right.
Not so much like I go straight in and like, what's the hardest moment of your life, but something that can kind of, like last week we talked about curation, and curating, oh my gosh, I can't speak anymore. I need coffee. I still can't remember my thought. Curating.
Here, take a picture.
Take a picture.
Take a picture. That'll make you feel better. You got it. You got it. Curation. Pictures. Curation.
Okay. Yeah, so I talked about how on my blog I want the thoughts to be very short. I want them to be very short and focused and like little tidbits instead of like a big entire story of like how their dog died, which is that's sad. So oh my gosh. I can't continue. All right. I can't recover from that. Thank you guys for watching. If this inspired you, let us know. Like and comment if it inspired. Like, tell us how it inspired you.
Write your life story.
Write your entire life story, and
And
we'll
then
post
send
it on
a
our blog.
picture of yourself to James. Or even better, be like, meet me in the dark alley behind the abandoned church that's haunted by vampires, and you can get my street portrait tonight. And James will be there. He'll do it. He's unrelenting. He will do it. He will be there.
This video is never gonna end.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. You know I love goofiness. All right. So,
All right.
we'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, goodbye.